Since the official Allegra annual meeting 2018, which took place at the EASA conference in Stockholm, I have been a formal member of the editorial board, or as we call it now, the collective. More recently, alongside Agathe Morat from Sussex University, I have assumed the shared duties of editor-in-chief. As Allegra Laboratory, founded in 2013 originally, has now become one of the more prominent non-traditional anthropological publishing platforms. This is what earned me the invitation to today's event. I'm very happy to offer to you some insights into our specific model of multimodal digital publishing and how it hangs together with what Allegra at her core is. Note that I call Allegra a she, and this gendered personification is not accidental. The model of publishing that we pursue, especially in its current form today, it's changing, is tightly connected to broader discussions on academia, collegiality, cooperation, contemporary working conditions, precarity, and anthropology itself that we, as a self-avowed collective, have been having and continue to have amongst ourselves, but also with our allies. We like to call our allies our allies, but yeah. Allegra as a platform, well, for us, and I'm trying to speak here in terms that the entire collective would likely endorse, there's very little sense for us to talk about our publishing model without talking about who we as a platform are and what we want and why we do what we do. Consider some structural changes we have undergone. At the start in 2013, there were two female directors called the Director of Things and the Director of Stuff. This was their way of poking fun at hierarchical models of organization that awarded their executives grandiose titles and took themselves overly seriously. So we weren't having anything of that sort. There was also a third person in charge of book reviews, but she was never even interested in director title at all. So I have this very unsatisfactory slide here. These founders established Allegra as a presence, especially in European anthropology, and to a degree as a voice even. And not just, and this I think matters for the question of multimodal digital publishing, not just through publication on a website, but from the beginning through physical presence on conferences, social media participation, and bold branding. Notice the pink. We printed a first banner, I think 2 meters wide, for the EASA conference in Tallinn 2014. And we had buttons and pins and everything. So there was always a material aspect to our online experiment. Eventually, over a protracted transition period, the director model was found to no longer reflect what we wanted to do. If you have directors, there's always a risk that they come to identify the platform with a professional personality, or even conflate these two, so that one becomes an extension of the other. As a team, we perceived that this problem was a problem and felt that this inhibited the voice of Allegra as it had come to emerge. An irreverent, reflexive, creative, collaborative, supportive, and especially anti-hierarchical and anti-authoritarian subversive positionality that still didn't want to take herself overly seriously in order to do solid work. We also started to move away from the label blog, which we had used for a long time, for what we do. In a way, we've been trying to come of age after all. Allegra is now a multimodal online publishing platform with text, videos, picture galleries, discussion spaces, podcasts, and more. So today we are consolidating what we have achieved and establishing structures and procedures that are independent of any individual member of the editorial collective. So there's a screenshot of what our starting page looks like, and I've opened this menu on one shot, which sort of gives an indication of the various formats we are hosting on the site. The shift to an editorial collective was finalized during the DGSKA/GAA conference in Constance in 2019, and it was a breath of fresh air for all of us. We now have 9 editors with more or less clear portfolios and responsibilities and different skills, it has to be said, 1 technical editor and a group of editorial assistants who mostly help with the practical work on WordPress, but also, by way of their assistance in thematic threads, essays, field notes, book reviews, etc., have the opportunity to try out editorial responsibilities themselves and gain practical skills. In recent years, we all gained some insights into how assistants and interns have been used and or abused in some open access publishing models in anthropology even. I believe ours are happy with the workload and the learning opportunities. We are still, and again, very active on social media, Twitter especially, but also Instagram and unfortunately Facebook, the most dysfunctional of the lot, which still, however, drives a lot of traffic for us. But we will take care of Facebook soon, and yes, that is a threat. The core element in our messaging is that we are Allegra, and everyone who approaches us with their draft submissions, who volunteers to do peer review for us, who shares and comments on our posts, and who reads us is our ally. Sure, we have a dedicated author gallery where everybody who's ever published with us is represented with their picture and very short bio. But if you're not on it, you're still an ally, and surely soon you'll be represented there as well. Now, these are all aspects that feed into the voice that we strive for. Allegra is about solidarity, collegiality, and when she speaks, she can switch between being playful and being very earnest and angry even. We maintain some special interests, among them intersection of art and anthropology, and a relentless critique of the neoliberal university. So, this is us currently. You might recognize some faces, some not. I'm not going to discuss the neoliberal university, but I do want to make a few points on how Allegra, what Allegra does is an earnest counterpoint to how things are done elsewhere. So we try very hard to not be boring, and we try not to tolerate bullshit. If you publish a text with us, there'll be very few footnotes, there'll be a hard limit on your word count, and there'll be few references. Please instead insert hyperlinks to things out there in the world to show readers that your scholarship in some way reflects real life concerns. Allegra also practices non-blind peer review. We also call it care review internally, mostly. So any submission that lands on my or Agat's desk and anything we think has merit and is a good fit thematically, we'll either farm out to another editor or provide some editorial feedback ourselves, usually within hours or a few days maximum. And once a version of a text exists that we think is worthy of somebody else's time, we find a peer reviewer, drawing our own extensive networks, the assembly of forum authors or other not yet allies, whom we invite into the fold by way of them reviewing a text for us. So we do not do blind peer review. Author and reviewer will not be hidden from one another. There are several reasons for this, and we will soon discuss this in a collective editorial post. But most of all, we feel that this is the best way to foster collegiality and trust. This has served us well so far. We've had no complaints. And in some cases, we've genuinely stimulated subsequent cooperations between reviewers and reviewees. Allegra is also open access. Yes, I'm back. More specifically, after a few years of publishing on an extremely permissive CC BY license, we are now operating within attribution non-commercial share alike 3.0 unimportant license, which we all agreed was the best fit for our model. So we are inviting non-commercial sharing, even remixing, adaptation, as long as proper attribution is provided. You can take a look here on the slide. We can do this, and we do this because none of us is paid anything, of course. We have a minimalist organizational infrastructure. We are trying to not incur costs beyond the funds required to keep the website going. And we accept and receive donations in the name of an association established under Swiss civil law. The next slide. There we go. Don't click on this, it's just a screenshot. Our wish would be, however, to eventually be able to pay our assistants, many of whom are still studying or starting their PhD. We are not there yet. We can also pursue this open access model without much concern for potential drawbacks, because we are bored by impact factors, by journal rankings, citation counts, and indices, to wit, any attempts to quantify academic output in general. Metrics are a striking expression of much that's wrong with academia today, so we're not even taking any steps to be allowed to play that formalized game of numbers. And yet, we realize that people who want to publish with us are under all sorts of institutional pressures. So while we are not a journal, we do quietly but insistently suggest that posts published by Allegra can and should be considered peer-reviewed publications rather than simply gray literature. We also want to be visible, of course, so we are currently exploring ways of becoming included into repositories and databases without having to buy into the system entirely. We will see how this goes. We were looking into DOI numbers for a while, but that seems to be more trouble than it's worth for us. In this way, through being visible and becoming more visible, by being open access and remaining open access, and through our own committed editorial practice, we try to help our allies so that they have some grounds to claim their publications with us are worth something, even as we reject the very idea that some publications should be more valuable than others for non-intrinsic reasons, just because they're published in a specific place. Simultaneously, we try to leverage our growing reputation to table the issue of the role of non-traditional research outputs, NTROs, in academia. This is a weird term, mostly used in Australia, but it drives home the problematic well, I think. How do selection committees deal with NTROs when considering applicants for hires or for grants? These are questions that matter if we want to pursue our publication strategy with integrity and transparency. The political goal, however, is clear as well. NTROs must be evaluated in terms of their academic qualities and not disqualified through the means of distribution. Now, for a while now, and this already was mentioned in the introduction to this workshop, people have had a chance to become familiar with text appearing online. I mean, still some might hold reservations, but even the most old school colleagues know that this is something that is happening. But we haven't come here to discuss texts alone. And those working in visual anthropology will be familiar with the long, long struggle to gain wider recognition, even for such central products of the discipline at large as ethnographic films. This, on the face of it, has always been bizarre. Films can reach more people, especially outside academia. Films can transport ethnographic data as well as offer interpretation. They probably require as much labor or more and skill as a written essay, and yet. The discussion of why films never received the recognition they truly earned cannot be concluded here, but Allegra is committed to the long-term objective that films and other multimodal products should find explicit acknowledgement when assessing someone's scholarly qualifications, be it by way of metrics or preferably by more substantive and qualitative evaluations. So here's one example. Our Corona diaries started already in April 1st last year, which our multimodal editor Ian Cook, he asked 7 diarists, 1 per day of the week, to reflect on some questions that were pressing at the time. And people from Kyrgyzstan, Hungary, India, Spain, Croatia, and Finland responded. 7 observers, 7 voices over 5 weeks. So originally these diaries could be listened to sequentially, but Ian eventually urged people to just click through them without following any pattern and embrace the entangled cacophony of it all, the noise, so that rather than curating knowledge for our listening allies, we afforded them material to create their own anthropological patterns. I think this is a good example of the new forms of collaboration enabled with digital publishing, but I feel we are only still at the beginning of exploring these possibilities. Podcasts in general have been becoming massively popular, but we also plan to expand the video some more, so keep your eyes open for more Allegra TV. The path we are following here is tricky though. So how can we maintain quality and vibrancy, and at times even edginess, but at the same time articulate the demand that Allegra publications be taken seriously? From the sheer number of submissions that reach us from India, it seems that we are being taken very seriously in India. So we try things. The film that was submitted to us was, after some debate, sent off to peer review. Why not? It is now a peer-reviewed film, posted on our website. We feel confident in making this sort of decision because we all have been doing this, academia, anthropology, internet, publishing, for a long time. We know how to assess, evaluate, edit, and improve all sorts of multimodal materials our allies might be producing. And we also know other people who can do reviews with both skill and care. The workshop announcement articulated an inquiry into new modes of accountability for our work and asked which new standards need to be set in order to count as academic publishing, e.g. for peer reviewing. What does that mean for academic education? And we are, as I indicated, we are aware of these concerns, but we are not overly concerned by these concerns. Through our work at Allegra, we are showing what is possible. We are making an offering, a gift, if you will, And rather than dwelling overly on the fact that we are publishing non-traditional research outputs, we are simply publishing them, making them accessible, making sure they will remain freely available and of a quality that we, as an editorial collective, alongside our care reviewers, find sufficient. We are inviting people to judge these products on their own merits. So we are leading all the horses to the water, but we have to see which horse will drink. Which brings me to the present. Earlier this year, we started our planned series of thematic editorials with our new charter, Anthropology for Radical Optimism. Maybe some of you have read it. If not, maybe you want to, because it gives some insight into the beating heart of Allegra. We think what we do is worthwhile, even it might not yet have the condition that more traditional outlets have, and even as it is doubtful that our intense efforts and labors will earn us, as members of the editorial collective, any significant benefits. Regina Bendix recently commented on such labors as editorial midwifery, especially in bringing pieces from scholars from outside Europe or the Anglosphere into publication, and that, especially in terms of its sort of hands-on labor, rings true enough. I brought you a slide from this editorial in Radical Optimism. I don't know if you can read it with the pictures, but I'm sure you can switch them off. This is just the beginning of it, and you can read it yourself. But I think it's important because it shows what we want to be doing. That we strive for new modes of expressions and together with others outside, and we try to move forward. And that's our optimism, that we think there is something to move forward to. And central for this, are always our allies, the people who see something in what we do and for whom and with whom we are doing it. And even as Allegra is not a person, but a collective, we performatively try to emulate qualities of a person you'd like to hang out with. Come in and know us better, man, as the ghost of Christmas present has it. And again, being multimodal reflects this understanding of ourselves and our practices. We want to enrich and enliven the field of anthropology, and we want to be a platform people go to specifically with less standard modes of expression. If anthropology has a future, it will probably lie in multimodal outreach, and to strive for that objective with esprit, curiosity, and solidarity seems much more worthwhile and less boring than by way of hierarchy, managerial control, and, well, metrics. This is the internet, ask me anything.